Hello and welcome to another episode of our knowledge sharing series. It's good to end the year here as well. As we wait for more people to join, it's good to see you. Remember, we are live on LinkedIn, we are live on X, and we are also live on YouTube. Karibuni sana. Karibuni sana. To our last episode of the ESSAC Knowledge Sharing Series, we end it with the time of use tariff uptake in Kenya. It's been an interesting year, an insightful one, and we are glad you've joined us, and we hope you have picked something along the way during these discussions that we've been having. Yes, naona mna nini, karibuni sana. We see you. Welcome, welcome. I'd like to take this moment to thank you for following us and being with us the whole year. You have those who've been part of our ESSAC events from earlier this year, where we had the C&I conference. We went on to have our second major event, the Power and Transmission Baraza, last month. And this monthly knowledge sharing series that we've been having, we appreciate your contribution, your showing up, and we hope they've been beneficial to you as well. So this will be our last knowledge sharing series. We'll be having other episodes on time of use tariff, because it's a point of discussion that the point of interest that we need to discuss and see the way forward. So karibuni sana. I want to hand over to our moderator for today, who will also give our speakers a chance to introduce themselves. You've probably met them in different forums, because they're experts in their own capacity. They will tell us more about themselves, and we look forward to the 1 hour of this. Remember to comment. If you have any questions, please write them on the comment section. We'll be reacting to them later, responding to them later. And remember, you can always come back to listen in case you missed this particular episode or any of our episodes throughout the year. The videos are still available on all our channels, on X, YouTube, as well as LinkedIn. You can always go back and listen in. And in case a question comes up when you're listening to our January episode or our March episode, you can always reach out to us, and we'll see the way forward. So I will take it, I will give it to George in Studio B.
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you very much for joining us today for this last knowledge sharing series of the year. I hope now it's better. Today we are going to discuss around the time of use tariffs. My name is George Aluru. I'm the CEO of the Electricity Sector Association of Kenya. And as Penina has mentioned, we have been hosting this knowledge sharing series on different topics throughout the year and also within our events as the association. Today we take a bit of a focus on demand, not our usual topic. But there is a need to look at how to generally grow demand in the country. And one of the modalities of growing this demand has been thinking around what we do with the time of use tariffs. So I have a brief presentation that I will just take you through, generally to set the tone for what we are referring to when we talk about time of use tariffs. And then our eminent panelists will then get a chance to respond to certain questions and tell us more really about time of use and where we want to go with it. So, as I said, I'm George Aluru. So the time of use tariffs are basically a special tariff. Generally, these are consumer tariffs. What a consumer is charged by the utility when they buy power from them. And for the time of use tariffs, they are basically tariffs that are trying to encourage the uptake of electricity at certain hours, which we call off-peak. So the way electricity is consumed in the country, or generally across the world, you have peak periods and then you have off-peak periods. The peak periods normally correspond to when most of the economic activity is going on in the country. For instance, if you look at the right of your screen, we have that bar that shows you weekday, Saturday, Sunday. What is red is normally times when there's not so much consumption of electricity. But in between the reds, you have a period of a lot of consumption, which is really the peak. In Kenya, that peak, or the very peak, happens between 4 p.m. and 10 p.m. And at that time, demand is high because all of us have gone home, we've switched on our equipment, the factories are still working, and therefore you experience a huge increase in demand. Now, this huge increase in demand is normally what we refer to as the peak capacity, or the peak demand for the country. And normally, when we are doing generation planning, the attempt is always to have enough generation to meet that peak. Then during these red periods, like Sunday, the whole of Sunday, there's very little economic activity, and therefore there's also very little demand for electricity. We also have a similar band on Saturdays, other than maybe between 7 a.m. and about 2 p.m. on Saturday, where many industries, not most, many are working. The rest of the day is normally a period where you don't have that much demand. And weekdays, as I mentioned, between about 10, 11 p.m., 11 p.m. when we are mostly going to sleep, all the way till when we wake up around 6, 7 a.m., you have a very low period of demand. Now, to try and encourage this uptake of electricity during these periods, during the last consumer tariff review, there were some time of use tariffs that were gazetted, which you're now seeing on the left. Some for the small consumers and others for the commercial and industrial of different categories. So going all the way from CI1 to CI7. In general, it was you consume, if you consume at peak, you pay a certain amount, and at off peak, roughly you pay half that amount. But this was not the first time Kenya was trying this time of use tariffs. So the first time around in the 90s and late 90s, early 2000s, there was an attempt to activate a time of use tariff. There was a trial period that was done. But what was observed is that instead of us filling up these times when people didn't consume power, we just shifted the peak. So people moved their consumption to those periods of the night where electricity was cheap, and therefore the peak just moved, and there was no increase in use of electricity during what we call the valleys, and I will show a graph later. Yeah, so basically, that's in basic terms what the time of use tariff is. And specifically, again, for Kenya, we operate in a regime where you first have to prove that you're consuming an average of what you've been consuming in the last 6 months. And then whatever is above that is what then qualifies for this time of use tariffs. It's one of the issues I think that we will go into today, And basically, we're trying to look at what can we do to better this time of use tariffs. Keeping in mind that at the beginning of next year, our regulator, EPRA, will be going through a tariff review period for the consumer tariffs. And normally these tariffs are then set for a period of about 3 years. So this is a good time for us to reflect upon this time of use tariffs and generally see what is our goal with them and are we achieving them. Now, just in terms of some statistics, just the way the time of use tariff is today, there has been some savings and sales related to time of use, and this is what you're seeing here in the graphs. So the savings are in the region of 180 million Kenya shillings at peak, and then going all the way down to 80 million Kenya shillings at different months of the year. And here we are showing 3 years. Then on the right, we also see that there has been a growth in the number of time of use customers in the various subcategories. So the small commercial ones, if you look at year 2022-23 and then 24-25, you see a consistent growth on the side of the small consumers of power who can access time of use. But then if you look at the bigger ones, we see a trend of some sort of decline, a slight decline year on year. So these are some of the things we need to consider and try and understand. Why are we seeing these? Is there something we can do better to increase the uptake of this time of use tariffs? In terms of absolute numbers, in the financial year 24-25, and all these statistics are available from the EPRA reports, the ToU consumption reached about 180 gigawatt hours, with a savings of about 1.4 billion Kenya shillings for industrial consumers. It represents, though it's a decline from the previous year of about 19%, equivalent also to 225 gigawatt hours, and in total about 2,452 companies benefited from this time of use tariffs in the last half of 2024. Now, we as an association have been looking into this issue of time of use, and we found that there are three main perspectives of how people look at time of use tariffs. There's the industry perspective or the manufacturer's perspective, and their main problem is that they want cheap power. So they want the power to be provided at a discounted as much as discounted as possible price. But then they have some challenges also in terms of how much of their manufacturing they can actually shift to these periods where we want them to consume. When they are small industries, then there are capacity limits, and they would really want to see some sort of flexibility in how these tariffs are designed. On the other hand, if you look at the regulator is really focused on having this sector-wide efficiency in how we use the resources. Remember, we at the time where there's not much demand, we still do pay for the installed capacity that's available to the system. So the better we use it, the more the overall benefit to the system. Therefore, the regulator also looks to see if it's possible to shift loads away from the peak, managing the peak, I mean, and filling up what we consider the trough or the valley. Now, on the utilities side, the utility is primarily concerned with seeing that the sector revenues or whatever tariffs that they collect on behalf of the entire sector are sustainable. So if we then do any kind of changes on the time of use tariff, we must ensure that they're still collecting enough to be able to pay for all the investments that have been made in the sector, all the way from generation, distribution, transmission, and even regulatory and policy elements. Whatever we need to pay for, they need to be able to collect. And of course, for them also, it's really important to get some additional off-peak consumption. So these three sort of points of view don't always agree. when you want to have discounted electricity, then you will reduce the total sector revenues. When you want to load shift and manage the peak, then you will curtail the growth of demand without necessarily increasing consumption of peak. So the idea is for us to find some sort of middle ground that will enable us to tick these 3 points of views to as great an extent as is possible. So just to show you again, the regulator wants us to load shift, improve the utilization of capacity, and where possible also shave the peak. This then also challenges manufacturers because the way we have structured it right now, manufacturers are then kind of forced to be constantly expanding for them to be able to access this time of use tariffs. On the utility side, the utility really wants us to have sustainability of the entire power sector. And this should kind of guide how we do any changes without causing the problems we saw in the initial trial periods where the peak just moved. So the whole idea is to try and see how we can fill the valley. And this is what you are seeing between the two graphs. If we can increase the use of power, of electricity within this period of the valley, then our time of use tariffs would have achieved the bulk of the goals that we want from the view of the utility. But remember, again, from the industry, the request is that they want to see cheap power, lower cost power, and then it's for us to try and manage these three interests in a way that is positive for the sector. So I will stop my presentation there and now introduce us to our experts. Today we have a panel of three, I would say, eminent personalities who I will allow to present themselves, starting with Wilkista, then Arthur, then Annabelle, in that order. Karibuni sana.
Thank you very much, George, for that introduction. I feel that you have already sufficiently covered the topic. My name is Wilkista Akinyi. I work with GIZ Kenya as an energy specialist under the Energy, Transport and Climate Change Cluster. Specifically, I work on providing technical and policy advisory to support Kenya as we look at promoting the framework conditions for our transition to 100% renewable energies in Kenya. So this is a bilateral commission by the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, working very closely with the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum, as well as the other energy agencies, such as the regulator, the utility, the transmission and distributors as well. So looking forward to this discussion. And I think I will hand it over to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Arthur, you may introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. My name is Arthur Okwemba Peyua. I'm a certified energy manager. I've been practicing engineering for the last more than 25 years. And I've interlinked more with the time of use tariffs, especially when we are doing energy management and during our auditing and recommendations. And most cases now, I'm working as a director for Greenway Solutions Limited, renewable energy systems, and trying to model daily, looking at sustainable processes that use less energy to produce more. So thank you very much, panelists. I appreciate you. I'm happy to be here today. Thank you.
Last but not least, Annabelle.
Thank you very much, George. My name is Annabelle Wambui Kamondo. I work with the Commonwealth Youth Council. I do advisory for trade and entrepreneur development. And apart from that, I'm also a manufacturer where I'm representing the small businesses, that's the emerging enterprises, SMEs, women and youth. I'm looking forward to having a fruitful discussion and coming up with a way we can be able to talk about this time of use tariff. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Annabelle. I think we'll start with you. Just from that point of SMEs, young entrepreneurs, how do time of use tariffs affect you, and how do they influence your business growth, competitiveness, and the way you make investment decisions? Maybe just give us a bit of flavor on how SMEs and young entrepreneurs look at this time of use tariffs.
Uh, Basically, when we're talking about the time of use tariff and we're looking at small businesses, that's SMEs, medium and micro small enterprises, the biggest challenge that we have is that we are not, even if we are given the time of use tariff, we are not able to cover on the other costs. The moment I decide that I'm going off peak, there are other costs that will come with it. That, bearing in mind that I'll have to have 2 shifts. So I'll have to have another shift at night. The second one is that I'll have to have security. The third one is that maybe supervision and many other things that will happen at night. So when we talk about the time of use tariff for the small businesses, yes, it is good, but it also comes with other costs that cannot be catered for even if I decide I want to go off peak. So it becomes difficult for the small businesses to take advantage of this time of use because they are not able to take up on all the other costs that are coming. So when we talk about that, that's where we are saying that we need to have more incentives given to the small businesses. We need flexibility. We need predictability. Because when you talk at the positive effects for this particular, when you lower the cost, yes, it will be good. But how am I able to shift to having 2 shifts? That I'll have a shift during the day and I'll also have another shift during the night. On the negative side is that it will limit me on certain factors where I'm not able to access capital that can be able to pay for the costs that will come if I uptake the time of use tariff, especially if I decide to go off peak. So basically, the bottlenecks is that the small businesses have challenges with having capital and technology. Those are the challenges they face, and that's where we are saying we need our regulators to come up quickly and bring up the smart meters so that we can be able to go to the automated production. When we go to automated production, we'll be able to influence. So basically, what will happen is that the regulators will see that there will be more uptakers. There will be more small businesses uptaking the time of use tariff. Yeah. Thank you, George.
Thank you, Annabelle. I think you mentioned a really important point there in terms of the other costs that come with trying to then shift your load towards this time of use tariffs, and also discussing around incentives that we probably can be given to enable us to produce at these times where the time of use is trying to shift us to. I know you have some experience in doing some of load management related to ToU in industry. And just in line with the question that Annabelle has put to the floor at the moment, how did you then use to decide what to shift, how far to shift it without hurting your production? And then what can other industries borrow from this approach? I believe you are in the dairy sector at that point. What can, for instance, SMEs learn out of how you approached it?
Thank you very much. First of all, you need to understand what cost you are running and what type of consumption of energy you are consuming. And again, to start with, you have to start with the energy audits. That's where we start with, and carrying out data and collection of data for the whole period of the year, having a portfolio of the same, so that when it comes now to mitigating on energy costs, you know which equipment consumes more. You have to carry out power logs to understand exactly per hour what is the cost. So hourly check on which machine is consuming more, so that now you decide on which machines to be shifted. In most cases, those machines that are shifted include those that have inherent storage. For example, refrigeration system. You can run a refrigeration system and stop it. Then now at night is when you run it, and during the day you are not running it. We have practiced this quite a lot. You find that you have a compressor of about 200 kilowatts, and for you to run during the day is quite consuming. Then you shift it to the night shift. So at night shift, you have the Tarriff. It helps you now to reduce the cost of the energy. Number two is compressors. You also understand that they have storages. So you need to look at the data. You need to look at the storages. Those machines that have storages are easily movable. Those that cannot be easily movable include, like, let's say, thermal energy machines. Let's say a boiler that is running. So these boilers are encouraged to continuously run, but you can shift the whole processing system. For example, in dairy, we had to move all machines to processing at night. So at night, you have all the machines, the separators and the compressors are running at night. And then during the day, you are doing packaging so that you have light machines during the day doing packaging. And remember, at night, when you are shifting, you are also looking at the number of staff that you're working with. During pasteurization or processing process, you use less, but during packaging, equipment movement, material movement, you have a lot of personnel that you move with. So at night, you reduce on that. Also, understanding that this Tarriff has to also integrate efficiency in it. And that is where we also look at the efficiency of the equipment. Some machines need to be retrofitted. I mean, retrofitting means that you need to replace it with the more efficient machines. So when you are looking at this Tarriff, for you to mitigate the total integration requires that you need to have a proper understanding of hourly consumption, the energy you are consuming, the efficiency of the machine, and then the type of technology that you are using so that it can assist you to reduce on the costs. I don't know whether I've answered.
Yes. Thank you, Arthur. I think you raised some very good points in terms of first undertaking energy audits. Then you get to know which equipment consumes more and which one can be shifted. I think you've given some examples of those that you say have storage. For example, refrigeration and compressors, which you can chill or compress, then kind of use that stored either heat or pressure from the compressor at a later time. So these are sort of examples of some loads that you can shift. And perhaps maybe just dwelling on you a bit more, what are examples of things which we basically can't shift? Like which sort of equipment do you think would not be able to be shifted to operate at off-peak times? Just give us a kind of a feel in an industry what cannot be shifted.
Yeah, those that are, for example, continuous need to be running continuously. For example, a milk reception, you may not shift it. It's a continuous running. So you need to look at machines that are continuously running and consuming the energy, but cannot be shifted. Milk reception, you look at the servers, they cannot be shifted. But when you're looking at a milling machine, you can shift it very easily. So a server you cannot shift because the continuously it has to continue to run. So in most cases, these are machines that when you are doing the mitigation, a continuous required that the machine must continuously run. You may not avoid to run to shift it. However, we always advise that you got a hybrid system. That is how you can help it during the day, so that you can use a different model of energy to substitute for that.
Thank you, Arthur. Now coming to Elkista, Now shifting gears a bit to regulatory and why we do this time of use tariffs. Generally, from what you've seen from both Kenya and other markets, why exactly do we normally have time of use tariffs, and what particular problems are they meant to solve? And I can just give us a global perspective, not necessarily only for Kenya.
Thank you very much, George. I think for me, when I think about time of use tariffs and why they exist, maybe we can also start from a very simple analogy in view also of the audience that we are interacting with. I mean, it's like, the public transport system. We have the very heavy seasons when everyone is traveling, such as the time that we have now. It's a busy travel season, but even typically every day we have the morning hours or the rush hours, and then the hours where there are very few people traveling. And so in terms of people are traveling, when there are so many people traveling, of course, it becomes more expensive in terms of fuel that is required, but even the hours that is spent on it. So it's not economically efficient for us. So moving on to the electricity sector, why times of use tariff exists, it's for the same reasons. It's just that now we're talking about a different commodity, but also one, we need to be able to manage the sort of spread the demand so that we are not having very heavy power plants, especially the peakers, which typically can be thermal power plants running, because that means it's going to be expensive. And if it's expensive, the end result is that the consumers, such as the SMEs that we've already spoken to, will be complaining about very high cost of electricity that cannot really influence how they make decisions, whether we introduce time of use tariffs or not. And then maybe the other thing that I can talk about is that time of use tariff ideally has been designed in many markets globally, so it is not something new. I mean, even for us in Kenya, we have had it for quite a bit. And for the same reasons that some you had already alluded to. Number one is from the regulator perspective, we want to be able to manage our loads as a country and sort of have a more smoothened load curve, because then it means also we are able to provide more stability for our network, which means it's less expensive to run it. But then secondly, also time of use tariff has been applied because we need to diversify on the revenue scheme, which again, you've already alluded to. And in other markets as well, this has been applied really to be able to sort of ensure that the cost burden for all the consumers in the country is ultimately cheaper. It is not always achieved, but that is the thinking behind it whenever these tariffs are put into place. So in terms of what it is meant to solve for us in Kenya at the moment, and I think this is also important to emphasize, for us, the time of use tariff was originally designed because of the revenue requirements. So ideally, we are looking at three different people wanting three different needs met. But the main reason why time of use tariff was set was in order to be able to really diversify that revenue targets. Whether we are edging towards achieving it or not, it's probably a different discussion. But then in the process, of course, as you have mentioned, we also needed to ensure that the other needs of the other people are looked at as we try to really design something that works for us as a country. So I think maybe the other thing that I can add on from a global perspective is that when time of use tariffs have been designed, they have been put in place so that they can be able to also ensure that the electricity markets of those countries are sort of giving the consumers an opportunity to be able to decide the kind of consumption pattern that they want to have, so that you're not having something very flat. At the moment you have flat rate, or even if you have time of use tariff, it's in a way still flat because it's a one size fits all personality. But what is really desired by most countries that introduce time of use tariff is in order to be able to have something that the consumers to whom it applies can actually feel that there's a difference that comes with it, so that if I decide to actually shift some of my load, then I see the significance of why I am doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. I think I like that example of or the analogy of just transport. I think that really can be related to by all Kenyans. So it basically means when everybody's at rush hour, when you wake up and you're going to work, that's a peak period. Sometimes if it's raining, the price will go high, and maybe when everyone is in the office or everyone has already reached their destinations, then you find the public transport vehicles are just idling. And therefore, we are kind of trying to ensure that we are using our public transport system more efficiently, or we spread that demand away from a certain period. I guess that's kind of what peak and off-peak is. And maybe just again dwelling on you a bit more, Wilkista. We know how and I've presented around how the structure of the off-peak windows are today, and the whole idea of eligibility and the thresholds that you need to meet. From your view and from also a kind of a regulatory design perspective, what parts are the most essential to get right in how we design this time of use tariffs?
I think it's a good time that we are having this discussion, because the regulator is already thinking about doing the reviews. I think one of the things that we really need to think about is the eligibility requirement, because as already been alluded to, this 6-month averaging criteria is not working for everyone. I mean, we have other challenges that are being faced in the economy. Macroeconomically, it's just more expensive to do business now. I mean, the cost of business has risen by 20% in Kenya just in 2025 alone. There's inflation that we have to deal with. The access to liquidity is becoming more difficult for everyone. So ideally, with that, then we have to think about how do we ensure that we have an eligibility criteria that does not require you to really be continuously expanding your production, because that is beyond your control. You know, the other factors are at play. And so I think how we can review that is, number one, is that if we're introducing time of use tariff, ideally, if you are in the category that qualifies for that, then from where I sit and seeing also how other markets have done it, then you should be able to qualify for that without having, you know, a period for which you have to increase production, so that you can, as a customer, you go in applying either to be on time of use tariff or the normal tariff. So that if you're on time of use tariff, then for the hours that it applies, it automatically would apply to you. And I think that is something that we can consider looking at as a country. I think the other thing that we can look at as well, and there's potential here, is expanding on the bracket to those for whom the time of use tariff applies. At the moment, we have it for the small commercial customers and the C&I customers, commercial and industrial customers. And I feel there's really a potential which we are not tapping on as a market, which is our residential customers. I mean, if you look at it, the peak, our sharp peak, like the period for which really the peak is very high and we have to ramp up, is typically maybe 2 to 3 hours at most. So, and these 2 to 3 hours is the time when everyone else is at home. So these are the people that we also need to look at in terms of, is there opportunity, especially in the digital age that you're living in, where people have a lot of appliances at home. You know, the middle class are increasingly investing in things like washing machines. We are seeing e-cooking appliances. I know there's been discussions ongoing around the special e-cooking tariffs. So these are things that we also, there's potential to look at them when we are redesigning the time of use tariff, so that you can expand that bracket and capitalize on some of these residential customers who push the sharp peak higher anyway during those hours. And then I think that the third thing that we could also look at is in terms of having not a flat rate application or time of use, because one of the discussions, for example, we've had with the industry, both the big, manufacturers and the small ones, is that, well, this 50% discounting, I don't really feel it, you know, whether I am a big player or a small player. So maybe we really need to look at it and design it in such a way that it is not a standard discount of 50%, but it would apply to either the consumer category, for example, but also the other things we've spoken about, the timings. So here we look at static time of use tariffs, so we are going to have specific tariffs for the normal hours, the tariffs for the higher peak hours, and then the mid, sort of what I would say, the mid peak hours. Because when you look at the window which you had presented at the beginning of the session, for the time that we consider off peak, it is actually also very varying. You know, the off peak hours tend to vary. So we need to look at those hours. And I liked what Arthur mentioned earlier, also looking at the consumption pattern so that we understand within those hours, how does it vary, so that we can also try to sort of model a tariff structure that responds to those timings of the day. We also mentioned the seasons of the year. When we have our low hydro season, that is a completely high peak season if we are to use our other generators, our thermal generators, for example. During the day when we have solar, that can be a really low peak hour. So that is the time that we are capitalizing on our VRE plants, for example. And so the tariffs really need to also be seen as to be responding to the kind of generation plans that we are running for different times of the day, different times, seasons, and of course also when we anticipate that people are going to be using them as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. I think that's a very comprehensive response, considering seasons, considering the types of generation that's being run, consideration around qualifying automatically if you're already within that bracket. And of course, expanding the bracket. You've also talked about consideration of residential customers and whether they can also kind of access time of use, or we can use them also to help us with the kind of sharp rise in demand that we see during the peak. Perhaps we can have some sort of time of use tariff for them that would allow them to shift into either the shoulder, what you're calling the what do you call it? Like the moderate peak. I just call it shoulder. So there's a very low period, then the one in the middle, then the peak. And maybe again to come back to Annabelle, how could this reform structure better support entrepreneurship, innovation, and the scaling of youth and SME-led businesses? And I asked that specifically, also asking, what would you want to see changed? You are on mute.
Sorry for that. When we talk about the time of use tariff for the small businesses, we want to look at it as an enabler, not just as a benefit. So, one, we want the time of use tariff to be tiered. For example, we can have different bands for micro and small medium-sized enterprises so that it can benefit different businesses at different categories. So that if they're not able to shift production immediately, it can be done through different bands. Like, for example, we can have 3 shifts instead of 2 time of use. Then we can also have subsidies and financing. We need to have financing because if we provide loans and grants for energy efficiency, especially for the night operations, it will be easy for the small businesses to be able to uptake this time of use tariff. Because the financing will be able to lower their costs, and it will also help them in uptaking this time of use tariff. Another thing would be aggregation. We need to have aggregated manufacturing places, or what do you call them, industrial parks. This will be able to support small businesses so that they can come together, like, for example, hubs or community charging stations or processing stations, so that these small producers are in one category where they're in one place And so they'll be able to uptake that time of use because they are using it collectively. It's not for only one person. The other need we need as small businesses, we will need to have better information and capacity building. So we need more outreaches to be done. We need audits, better audits to be done. And this one should be aimed and targeted to the youth entrepreneurs and even women and youth and SMEs, so that we can be able to learn how these simple changes in shifts and load timers can be able to affect these small businesses. And also, we need to have a lot of awareness campaigns so that these small businesses can be able to learn, because maybe most of them don't even know about this time of use tariff. So we need a lot of awareness campaigns. This will be targeted to the youth, the SMEs, and the women-owned businesses. But basically, aggregating these people together so that they can be able to uptake that time of use will be very ideal for the small businesses. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Annabelle. I think the whole idea of aggregating and just having them in one place, you call them hubs or processing stations, I think is a really good one. But perhaps maybe you could tell us just a bit more about the thinking around the tiered bands. You said you'd want to see like 3 bands. Just expound a bit on that. What you mean by that?
When I talk of the 3 bands, it's the same thing that Will Kista was talking about, that we can have the peak, the mid peak, and the off peak. So they will be able to take advantage of those. If I'm not able to do it in the mid peak, I can do it in the off peak. But now it will be useful when they have an aggregated place where they can get security, they can get this supervision, they can get the ToU done in one aggregated place. So the 3 bands will be very useful for the small businesses. Yeah.
Okay, that's well understood, and thanks again. Coming back again to Arthur. Arthur, supposing you're advising a Kenyan manufacturer who is considering time of use today, what 2 or 3 steps would you tell them they need to take first so that they are able to capture the value, and how should they approach it?
One is that the time of use has a spirit of encouraging uptake of energy and reducing wastage or costs, so that you are not wasting your time. You do the planning. Step one is you need to do an energy audit and get the data. Step number 2 is that you need to schedule your work plans. For example, you need to plan your work very well. Number 3, or that should have started, you need to create a very strong awareness within the management, the workers, so that they understand that time of use tariff is not only a tariff, but operational strategy, so that you use this as an operational strategy to help you to reduce the costs. So these are a number of issues that the manufacturers should come in and look at it. And number 3 is that we are integrating 3 items together. One is the efficiency of the equipment. Number 2 is that the productivity or the production, and then the energy or unit uptake. So that when the manufacturers should need to come up with proper documented data that can be shared across for proper planning and decision making. This one will help across the board to assist in the uptake of time of use tariff.
Thank
I
you.
would also wish.
Go ahead. Just go ahead.
I would also wish to mention very well that time of use tariff is there to assist manufacturers and uptake. And then what happens is that during the time of use tariff, if you are well planned, it means that your production need to increase. However, we need also to increase our equipment technology. And when we are increasing the equipment, improving the equipment technology, it means that we are going to a more efficient system. So when it comes to time of use tariff, I would encourage manufacturers to come up with improved efficiency and also increased production. And in this scenario, when you are not punished, where a tariff comes in that does not punish you because you improved your efficiency. Let's look at, for example, if you install frequent drives to an equipment, it will reduce the cost of energy uptake. However, it will increase productivity. But possibly looking at the energy perspective, it has not consumed much, but has increased production. So in this case, the data that we collect should revolve around the efficiency that efficient measures that you have been taking to improve your system, and then the increase in production. So that if you have been increasing the quantity that you have been producing, of course, the quantity only increase when you are using energy. And at the same time, you are now, your consumption, whether it has reduced, the tariff that it comes in will also consider the efficiency, will also consider the productivity, and will also consider the uptake of the energy. But modeled on data collection.
Yeah. And I like your focus on data. And perhaps maybe just to pick your mind again on the same concept. The whole attempt to fill the valley at the time of use can be seen to be contradictory also to the efforts towards energy efficiency in industry. Because basically when you're doing energy efficiency, you want to produce while consuming as little as possible or less. But time of use is us trying to say consume more during off-peak. So how do you reconcile these two different goals?
The way to reconcile this is first to have a baseline data that tells you for the whole year how much you've consumed. So once you know the baseline data, and if you improve your efficiency, you'll now have that as a new specific energy consumption. Then now integrating both the baseline and the specific energy, new specific energy consumption. It will help with increased production. It will help you now to come up with a tariff that would definitely show that they need to increase the same. And this one, maybe you are also given a premium tariff on that, so that that sector needs to be considered differently. Having demonstrated that you increased your production, however, your system was efficient, which is another goal that the country is also trying to achieve. And at the same time, you manage to consume the uptake during the time of use tariff, that is the night shift tariff, for example. So what we'll need is that basically to have the basic information and to use productivity, specific energy consumption, rather than to use the increase in kilowatt or units consumed.
Thank you for that. In case I want to come back to you and probably just ask, what sort of barriers do you see in terms of making demand flexible in Kenya, and how does the way we kind of designed our time of use tariff help this or hinder this?
Thank you very much, George. So I think one of the biggest barriers to time of use tariff uptake in Kenya, it's consumer behavior. I mean, we have also had it right in this conversation. For a consumer, and in this case, because of the people that it applies to at the moment being the small commercial customers or the larger C&I consumers, the interest for them is to have cheap electricity. It doesn't matter what time they get it. So, so even trying to encourage people to, for example, shift the operations to the night becomes a little bit difficult because it comes with an additional cost to it, and some of these costs have already been mentioned. So that is one of the biggest barriers. Consumers themselves do not really see the flexibility. They're a bit inelastic, if I may look at it that way, because there are certain trade-offs that you might not be able to overcome if you have to do that shift. That's number one. But then again, also we have spoken to the real elephant in the room for us as a country today, which is at macroeconomic level. It's just more expensive. Even if people want to shift, they don't have the resources that they would require to be able to make that adjustment to shift. So that is something else that is a bit of a challenge. But looking at it more at a sector level, one of the reasons why perhaps there's not much uptake on time of use tariffs is because of the lack of transparency, which has already been spoken about. And this is something that we have alluded to in terms of, there is lack of smart metering technologies, which is usually a prerequisite. If you're going to have time of use tariffs, then you have to have smart meters. It's a non-negotiable. Because otherwise it becomes a bit difficult, to decide the basis of which somebody is actually qualified or not to be on the time of use tariff. So that's the other barrier that we have. And of course, that comes at a capital cost. Not everyone can be able to afford the smart meters. We've heard from KPLC. This is something that they would love to introduce in the market and have as many people as possible really shift to smart metering. But the capital cost that comes with it is something that we also have to think about critically as a sector. And I think maybe also the other thing that I can speak to is in terms of very close to smart metering, but on the appliances side is automated machines. And maybe this is something we also have to look at in terms of, as new appliances emerge in the market, are we actually making the deliberate effort as a country to ensure that the products that are sort of being standardized to get into our market are already smart enough so that as a consumer, for example, if I had to shift something to the night hours, I don't have to worry about somebody being there to make sure that you switch on your machine to run it at midnight. You can already time it during the day and say, I want this and that machine. This can even include the electric vehicles, which is becoming a boom in our country as time goes by, so that you can actually time some of these things and somebody does not have to attend to them in person. But maybe also I can respond to that. This is not in any way trying to say we want people to lose their jobs because we are automating. But I think because the idea of time of use tariff is so that we can be able to diversify on production, then for the hours that we are not going to have people being there because of logistically more challenging reasons, then we can have already automated systems that can be able to do that. So I think those are some of the barriers that we are currently looking at in terms of being able to really, make the most of the opportunities that come with time of use tariffs.
Thank you, Kista. And at this moment, I would also want to remind the audience that we are taking questions. Just about to shift towards the audience questions. Just feel free to post your questions on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on X. We are seeing them. We already see a few have been posted, and we will ask our panelists to respond to your questions. And maybe just a last one, which can be handled by both Annabelle and Arthur, and from your different perspectives. I know Annabelle, you've already talked about the 3 tiers, subsidies and financing, aggregation, but when we now are, let's say, addressing EPRA during the tariff review, just like what I've asked Wilkista, what barriers do you see and what specific things do you think we can ask, we can, let's say, recommend to be done? I know it's kind of close to what you are saying before around the enablers, but just in a realistic way, what 2, 3 things do you think, or what one thing, let me ask it that way so that it's simple. What one thing do you think, if we were able to achieve, would make this time of use tariffs work better for us?
I think the one I would talk about openly for both manufacturers and also home consumers, it is transparency in pricing. That is the most and the most important to all of us, because we all need transparency. We need to know, like, if I shift to this kilowatts, how much will I save? And with that clarity, most people will be able to come in and uptake this time of use tariff. That would be one. And then the other one I'd mention only two, is reasonable flexibility. We need them to be a bit more flexible. As in, you allow businesses to register, not because you are just at this category. Allow businesses to register, and then you make the switching, the procedures for switching simple. That will be the most important thing that I would tell our regulators to work on. Yeah, and also to be
Thank you.
predictable. Yeah, thank you very much.
Arthur?
What I would mention is that one thing is like we lack proper awareness from IPRA, and it delays, because some industries even don't know that first they have to register first for the tariff. So the awareness has to be taken very serious. Number two is that for this tariff to work well, it should be appealing, the price should be reliable for quite some time, because there is quite a lot of variations in between. When, for example, you subscribe for the tariff and it changes within a short time, and possibly there is no clear communication on the change of the tariff, you realize that also creates resistance to motion. I would say that IPRA has been doing well. When we started the energy audits. There was an enforcement on energy audit. We are not saying that we need to enforce all the industries to do that, but I would believe that all the industries during the policy to come up with a policy in their energy management system that allows time of use tariff as part of the energy policy, and it's be percolated all through to all gather of the levels in the industry. So the manufacturers need to take them as strictly as the way we are taking energy audits, so that now we start managing it quite well. So that was what I would say, that from the EPRA perspective, possibly they need to also make it quite lucrative. If it is quite expensive, how much, the way Gista says, how much are we going to save? What is the saving? Because I'm looking at this equipment that has a 200 kilowatt hour, and I had to shift this equipment to an equivalent with a good technology. Then at the same time, you are allowed to consume the same and pay. You realize that inefficient equipment would give you the savings. So during the audits, this is where this information was captured. Now, when we are shifting to this time of use tariff, it means that we need to do it, but we need also to carry out evaluation. After a period of, for example, after you have implemented it, let us have an evaluation period where technicians comes in to come and evaluate, are we moving in the right direction or not? And then if we are not moving in the right direction, what is the cost? So these ones will help us now to do to gain momentum on time of use tariff.
Thank you, Arthur. Well, I'll give you a chance just to mention one. What one thing do you think we can change before we now go to the audience questions?
I think I would not want to re-emphasize the things that we have already mentioned in terms of what needs to change, but definitely the eligibility requirement is something that we need to review going forward. But I would also want to emphasize on what has already been mentioned. I think there's need for great awareness and also to demystify. I like the conversations that we've had about energy efficiency and time of use tariff being different, two different sides of the same coin, if I may look at it that way, in terms of being the first fuel of the economy before we think about expanding our generation infrastructure, the upgrades that we need in order to be able to have more people during the peak hours. So I think I would leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I will now take us straight to the audience questions. And again, if you're watching or listening in from LinkedIn, YouTube, or X, please feel free to add on your questions. We will see them and read them out for our panelists to respond. And I start with one from a user called Udadanamas. And they ask, how about water heaters? There are water heating tanks that come with houses these days, and it uses lots of water. What can be done to contain their electricity costs? And I think also in the context of time of use, perhaps Arthur, you can go first on this one.
Good. Water heaters are some of the equipments that we can schedule and use it during time of use. And this one is quite easy because you carry out insulation systems. So you heat during the night, but during the day, the whole system is insulated and stored so that you are now consuming it during the off-peak. And the off-peak, I'm calling it during the day now, in this case. So that during the night, you're using the energy. You store that energy in the water as heat, and then you use it during the day. It comes handy, especially when you are having restaurants, places where people are having lodgings or so. So these are places where you can use it quite very easily.
Mm. And I remember in the past there used to be something when houses used to have these big drums for heating water, and then you just use in the morning. There used to be some kind of signal that is sent by the utility to switch on and off your water heater at different times. But now that today we have mostly switched to instant showers. How do we then maybe be able to achieve the same thing with water heaters? Because literally you could heat the water when you're sleeping, and then by the time you wake up, the water is warm. How do we now do this in this era of instant showers?
Yeah, instant showers, they have moved, though they are saying they are efficient, they are not as efficient as. But what we would say is that when you have an efficient equipment and you're using it to heat water, the most important thing is you need to have a system where you are storing the same energy in water. That is insulated systems. So that when you are using insulated systems, they store more energy, more water, hot water. Because at the same time, you realize that when it comes to morning, that is where you have a peak hour where most people are showering. And when you are designing a house, what comes very difficult, especially to energy, and it has been a challenge even to solar systems and battery system installation. You find that during morning when people are showering, they consume quite a lot of energy. But if it was stored in an insulated system, you are now easy to use it. One is that you don't even bother whether the power is there or whether the power is not there. So you are utilizing power when it's quite available. And that time, most people are not using this power. So you are also trying to help the uptake of the power. So I believe by using these improved systems, now insulated systems will help you to come out of instant heaters.
Thank you, Arthur. I will go to the next question. We have a question from Abel Kamau. He says the major challenges on the time of use is formula that, I think he means is the formula that only applies to changes or improvements made on a month-on-month basis? How best can we design it so as for it not to be an unusable incentive? I think Wilkista and Annabelle, you can take a go at that from your different perspectives.
Thanks, George, and thank you, Abel, for this question. Yes, this is one of the design situations we alluded to, where we said in terms of how to design this formula, really the regulator now needs to look at not sort of the incremental use, which is what is being applied now, and then you get the average, after you exceed a certain threshold, then that is when it becomes applicable, to just saying, let's have time of use tariffs available under these consumer categories. So as a consumer, you can decide you either want to be in the time of use tariff or the normal tariff. So if you apply to the normal tariffs, of course, it comes with its own pros and cons, at least in all the markets, that is always the case. And if you decide that you want to be on the time of use tariff, then again, these are the possibilities that come with it. So for me, that would be one way to look at it. But I'm sure also we can, even as we get into this next tariff review period, it will be interesting to really look at what has worked well in other markets as well, so that we can be able to sort of just bring modification to that to suit our Kenyan context. Thank you.
Annabelle, any response to the same question?
Yeah, I'll just add to what Wilkista has said. We will have to work on having the three bands we were talking about. We'll have the peak, the mid-peak, and the off-peak. And then from there, we also need to ensure that the uptakers of the time of use are well informed. They have the information with them. So there is need for a lot of awareness for that. And then again, we'll also need to simplify registration for the ones who are the new people who are coming in to register for the time of use. It needs to be simple so that as many people as possible can be able to uptake on it, even as we go to the review. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Annabelle. Going to the next one, there's a question from Grace Lona, and this one, she has directed it straight at you, Arthur. How did you implement load shifting without affecting the incremental 6-month rolling average?
Good question. Load shifting, when we looked at it, we looked at which machines are quite heavy and consuming. And I said I've worked more in dairy sector. And I'll give an example of this dairy sector. You look at the machines that consume more milk refrigeration systems. We look at air compressors, and then, of course, thermal consumes less. So for us to move to load shifting, we had to decide that all refrigeration systems are going to be done at night. And then we store the chilled water to 2 degrees, 2 degrees, so that during the day, the compressor is shut completely, is not running. And that one alone was saving us 200 kilowatts times 10 hours of the day, times the cost per kilowatt hour was 16. So we realized that the savings was quite enormous. And then air compressors, during the production, packaging is when you need the air compressors, but we improved the storage system for air compressors. That one also helped us to shift without interfering with the quality or without interfering with production planning. So these are some of the things, but I told you to start with is that we had to take a laborious energy audit to do that, so that we got to understand which machines are supposed to be shifted to the time of use tariff.
Thank you, Arthur. Again, the members of the audience, feel free to continue to put in some more questions. We maybe have another 5 minutes where we can take questions. And I see one here from Liz Mubari. How can the impacts of mass load shifting caused by the time of use adoption be mitigated on the local grid infrastructure? And she says specific transformers where many people adopt the time of use. So how do we contain the impact of mass load shifting where there's some specific transformers where many people are adopting time of use? Who would want to try and respond to that?
Come again, the question?
Basically, Liz Mubari is asking, how can the impacts of mass load shifting caused by the time of use adoption be mitigated on the local grid infrastructure? My understanding, Liz, is that you're asking, there's an impact when you have these transformers or the grid in general in a certain area, and then within that area you find a lot of people shift towards these off-peak periods that we want people to shift to for time of use. The grid infrastructure either will get strained or underutilized, and how do we then try to overcome this? How can those impacts be contained?
Maybe I can try to respond to it briefly, and then other colleagues can chip in. Usually, how the grid infrastructure is designed, for example, when you're considering to connect loads to an existing distribution infrastructure, already at the time, even before that connection happens, already some grid impact studies would have been done so that it is assessed what impact you're going to have on the network. And if there is a case where, for example, there is need for reinforcement of that existing network, it will be done even before you connect. So I think maybe what I would like to clarify here is that when time of use tariff is coming, even if there was mass load coming from a certain location, and this could be an assumption, but ideally how the grid design was done to be able to serve that capacity in terms of the transformer requirements and the line carrying capacities, it took care of the loads that are within that region. So when you bring in time of use tariff, it's not to say that you're going to have more loads than what was already designed for that location, but it is to say that you're trying to spread this load so that it is not all coming from the same time, but you're having a more smoothened load curve within the country. So that's how I would see it. I don't foresee that we'll have a situation where there would be mass load that actually exceeds what was designed for that location, because then that is a different issue that needs to be addressed altogether, even before people make considerations of switching to time of use tariffs. But I think the other colleagues can add to that as well. Thank you.
That's quite well explained, because even during the day we are having, it's like a mass shift due to the day shift. And at the same time, you are not having strains on the TXS. So, I mean, those are transformers. So whether the shift is there, the design will have taken care into it that we are giving a particular load to this sector. So it is very clear that time of use is only helping us to use idle power that during the day. And when you saw that graph, you find that there is quite idle power during the night, which is not being used. And if it was used, then it would help us to uptake the power and make economic use of the same. So you realize that even if it's during the day, the same would happen, but it's not happening. So the design takes care of that.
Yeah, thank you. I think both of you have really well responded to that. And just to add that that transformation capacity is already there. And we're just saying at times when it's not in use, to increase the usage. More or less, that's what time of use is saying. Not really causing a mass shifting, other than just increasing usage when it's not used that much during the off-peak hours. I think that brings us to the end of the audience questions. And perhaps I'll just give my panelists a chance to give a closing comment. Just we'll go around and take a short closing comment, and then we'll be done. For the members of the audience who perhaps you have a question that hasn't been answered, or you'd want to ask an additional one, please feel free to still comment on our pages. We will normally review and give our panelists a chance to respond, and we will post that response within the same social media page that you would have asked. Thank you so much, our panelists. I would now want you to give us some closing remarks, and perhaps we now start in reverse. Annabelle, Wilkista, then Arthur.
Okay, thank you very much, George. Maybe I'll start by thinking. I was just when we have power, a lot of and it's not used. Does that mean it's just something? So I was thinking, is there a way that power can be stored? Can we have a way, maybe through batteries or whatever? I don't know whether there's a way that can be done. But then again, to come back to our time of use tariff, I think for the policy, we want to expand the tiered time of use with simplified eligibility so that we can have as many small businesses be eligible to take up this time of use. And then we can pair the time of use with targeted finance loans or grants. When we are able to put them here, it will be much easier for the SMEs to take advantage of the time of use. And then we promote the aggregation models I was talking about, because this will be able to help the small businesses come together and be able to produce. And then we deliver a lot of awareness. And basically, I want to target for the gender sensitive awareness so that we can be able to have more entrepreneurs register for this time of use. Thank you very much, George.
Thank you, Annabelle. Will you say it? Oh no, Arthur was going to be next.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate you for this session, for this time, and I think I've enjoyed the session. It's quite educative, and also it brings more insight of time of use. At the same time, I would wish to look at a tariff that has three more components. One, that looks from the manufacturer's point of view, takes care of efficiency, takes care of productivity, and takes care of consumption of the units, so that the three integrated and it is more reliable for a period of time, so that most people who are coming on board and the manufacturers, when they log in, they know for this period of time, I'm going to make this particular savings that is quite reliable. So before you start production, you can now schedule to move to the time of use tariff, and you can easily understand what cost you are going to uptake. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arthur. Krista?
Sorry, thank you very much once again for the opportunity to have taken part in this discussion. I think for me, what I want to say is that for the longest time, we have always looked at our power sector in terms of generation, but it's great that now we are looking at the potential that actually lies with us as consumers to be able to contribute to grid stability, reliability, investment that is required, potentially not having to be used, and also we as the consumers can actually contribute to the cheaper cost of electricity that we are all hoping to get to one day. And time of use tariff is a great incentive that allows us to be able to contribute in terms of demand response. So I would highly want to encourage, especially the customers who in the current period are eligible for that, to consider also having enrolling for the same or applying for the same. Sometimes it's good to learn by doing. You will be able to hear experiences of other people and how it went. But I think at the end of the day, for you as as a commercial customer somewhere who is using who has been hearing about time of use tariffs but has never really used it, the best way to find out how it works would be by actually trying to use it. So I would want to encourage us to embrace not just time of use tariffs, but all the demand-side management incentives that are made available to us as a country, so that we can together work to strengthen our power system and make it more reliable and stable to serve our needs as a country, even as we think about the shrinking capital that is available to be able to expand the existing infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to our panelists. I think those are some really good insights. In my mind, I also think around future enabling of flexible demand, where your demand can be moved from a certain time to a certain time. Whether you have when you have an arrangement with the utility around that, as also one of those things you can add on to this. We have come to the end of today's session on the time of use tariff uptake in Kenya. But as Penina mentioned, we will do still a few sessions on time of use as we continue to work towards this new tariff window that's going to be developed, and generally try and get ideas of what we can do to increase the use of electricity during the off-peak periods. Basically what we call filling the valley. I think this is really important to ensure that we have as much efficiency in terms of the utilization of the resources in the sector. This also being our last session of the year, I would also want to wish you a happy holiday period. Merry Christmas for those who celebrate Christmas. Happy New Year to all of us. We shall be doing this sort of KSS series also next year. So just keep a lookout to our social media pages. You will see the upcoming topics, and then also send questions, send ideas on what topics you think you would want us to cover in our future sessions. Asanteni sana. Have a good evening and see you next year.